Konnichiwa! Welcome to JLP Tutor, the go-to place for all things Japanese language and culture. I'm Chris, your language enthusiast and guide on this exciting journey into the beautiful world of Japanese writing. Let's grab your favorite notebook and pen because we're about to embark on a journey that will not only enhance your language skills, but also deepen your appreciation for the beauty of Japanese script. If you're ready, let's dive into today's lesson. Stroke. For the first stroke, draw it slanting to the right. For the second stroke, start from the center line and move down while expanding to the left. Leave a small gap just below the center line. The third stroke curves gently to the bottom left, stopping here once. Lift it slightly upwards and make a large circle. Finally, brush it off. Make sure to take a wide space for this. Stroke. For the first stroke, gently curve it towards the bottom right and stop here. Then flick it upwards. After the flick, imagine it connecting to the second stroke. Keep the top aligned. The bottom should be longer than the first stroke. Stroke. For the first stroke, place a dot slanting to the bottom right. Then, as if connecting it, draw slanting upwards to the right. Finally, brush it off around the center line. Stroke. Point diagonally towards the bottom right for the first stroke. The second stroke is drawn slanting to the top right. Next, move towards the bottom left and then return beyond the midpoint of the slanted line. Move straight down. Finally, draw a line to the right, ensuring the bottom is aligned. O stroke. For the first stroke, draw it short and slanting to the top right. The second stroke goes straight down slightly to the left of the center line. Stop briefly here, then move up to the top left and draw a slanting to the top right. Rotate around while creating a round shape, and finally, draw in a way that connects to a point. Let's begin with the character ka. The first stroke moves upward to the right, gently curving down to the left. Pause here, then jump to the upper left. The second stroke goes diagonally down to the left, ensuring the left side aligns diagonally. Finally, make a longer dot motion towards the bottom right. Now, on to ki. The first and second strokes are parallel, slanting to the upper right. The third stroke curves down to the bottom right. Pause. Then jump to the lower left. Connect from the jump, and the final fourth stroke moves down to the bottom right. Finish with a stop. Moving on to ku. Place the pen to the right of the center line at a 45-degree angle. Move down to the lower left, then turn towards the bottom right at the center line. Make sure the end point is slightly to the right of the starting point. Then stop. Next, let's look at ke. The first stroke widens slightly to the left, moving downward. Stop briefly, then jump upward to the right from here with a connecting image. The second stroke slants slightly to the upper right. Ensure that the intersection point is longer on the left. Finish with a longer horizontal stroke than the left vertical angle. Finally, this is how you write ko. The first stroke moves diagonally down to the right. Then stop and jump to the lower left. Connect as if it's continuous. The second stroke moves to the right horizontally. The overall shape is a vertically elongated rectangle. Let's start with the character sa. For the first stroke, draw a long upward line to the right. The second stroke starts around the center line and curves down to the right, creating a gentle curve. Pause here, then jump to the left bottom. Continue the motion, creating a connected image, and draw the third stroke down to the right. Now, let's move on to shi. Place the pen slightly to the left of the center line at a 45-degree angle. Draw a straight line down. Make a rounded turn and lift the pen towards the upper right. Next up is su. The first stroke is a long upward line to the right. The second stroke starts slightly to the right of the center line, angled at 45 degrees. Go straight down, then rise to the upper left, followed by an upward motion to the upper right, and a graceful rotation. Finally, at the center line, sweep across. Moving on to say. The first stroke is a long upward line to the right. The second stroke starts slightly to the right of the center line, angled downward to the left. The third stroke goes down diagonally to the bottom right, but finishes horizontally. Ensure that the horizontal angle of the first stroke is the longest. Now, let's look at so. First, a short upward line to the right. Then, move down to the left. Next, rise diagonally to the upper right, and finally, expand downward, creating a shape that widens towards the bottom. Balancing this form can be challenging, but imagine the upper half spreading downward. Character ta. In the first stroke, draw it short and slanting upwards to the right. For the second stroke, start slightly to the left of the center line, heading down towards the lower left. Cross it at a longer position towards the left. Ensure that the vertical strokes are positioned inside the horizontal strokes. On the right side, draw the upper line slanting upwards to the right, and the lower line slanting downwards to the right. For the character chi, in the first stroke, draw it slanting upwards to the right. For the second stroke, start from the center line and head down towards the lower left. Pause here for a moment. Move slightly upwards to the right, and finally, curl and flick near the center line. Begin by placing the pen at a 45-degree angle and slanting slightly upwards to the right. Proceed straight ahead. Then, curl and flick toward the center line at the end. For the character te, place the pen at a 45-degree angle in the first stroke, slanting upwards to the right. Then, curve significantly towards the center line. Stop at the end. For the character to, start by moving towards the lower right in the first stroke. Then, continue in an image that connects to the second stroke, moving towards the lower left. Curve significantly at this point. Finally, move straight horizontally and stop. And a bit to the left of the starting position. The first stroke should be at a higher position. This is how to write not. Start with a slanting stroke to the upper right for the first stroke. Make the left side longer as it intersects diagonally for the second stroke. Next, with the image of connecting to the third stroke, dot it like a triangle. Also, with the image of connecting to the fourth stroke, bring it down gradually while curving. Stop here for a moment. Move upwards to the left, and finally, move to the right. The ending takes on a triangular shape. Now let's look at ni. For the first stroke, starting from the initial point, bring it down gently to the left just below. For the second stroke, with the image of connecting to the next, draw it slanting to the upper right. Next, with the image of connecting to the third stroke, bring it down to the right diagonally. Ensure the left side aligns and make the last stroke slightly longer. The first stroke, bring it down gently while curving to the right diagonally. The second stroke starts from a higher position than the first. Here, curve gently. Stop for a moment. And lift it slightly before making a large curve. As for the final ending, lift to the upper right, then bring it down to the lower right. Ensure the lower part aligns, leaving a slight gap in a position slightly above. The first stroke, expand to the left starting from the initial point. Then bring it straight down. The second stroke slants to the upper right with the left side longer and the right side slightly protruding. Bring it down to the lower left, and here at a position higher than the first stroke. Change direction. Move up to the right diagonally. Create a peak, bring it down to the lower right, move to the left, then slant to the upper right and lower right to form the ending. Ensure the ending is slightly above the vertical line, leaving a gap. For no, start from the center line, initially curving to the lower left. Stop here for a moment. Lift upwards and rotate smoothly. Then flick at the end. Leave a generous space inside. Ensure that the final flick is slightly below the left side. Flick a bit longer. Make sure not to cross the center line. For ha, the first stroke, expand to the left from the starting point, curving gently, and bring it straight down just below. For the second stroke, with the image of connecting to the next, draw it slanting to the upper right. The third stroke intersects, making the left side longer. Bring it straight down here, then make a sharp curve to the left. Stop here for a moment. Move diagonally to the upper right, then down to the lower right. Ensure the left vertical stroke aligns with the bottom. The ending should be slightly above. For he, first, while slanting to the upper right, move forward. Then, near the center line, change direction while expanding down. Stop here for a moment. Then expand to the upper right again. Stop here. While curving, bring it down to the lower right. Ensure this boat is longer than the previous one. Start with a dot diagonally down to the right above the center line, connecting to the second stroke. Bring it straight down here and rotate. This part will be flicked at the end. Then, with the image of connecting to the left dot, Draw a slanting line. Next, with the image of connecting to the next dot, create a longer dot slanting to the lower right. Align the left and middle parts at the bottom. Place the right dot slightly higher, leaving a gap here. For hey, start around the center line, slanting to the upper right. Create a peak to the left of the center line. Then, bring it down to the lower right. Bring it down to a position below the starting point, and stop. For ho, the first stroke, expand to the left, curving, and stop just below the starting point. Then, jump upwards to the upper right. With the image of connecting to the second stroke, draw it slanting slightly to the upper right. The third and fourth strokes are also slanted upwards, but the third stroke should be shorter than the second. The fourth stroke comes straight down from here, then curves sharply to the left. Rises to the upper right, and comes down to the lower right. Connect at a position slightly higher than the left vertical stroke, leaving a gap. Ma. The first stroke, pull slightly to the upper right, horizontally. The second stroke, bring it down with a slight expansion below, shorter than the first. For the third stroke, bring it straight down from the center line, then curve to the left. Stop here for a moment. Lift slightly to the upper right and bring it down to the lower right. Ensure the ending aligns generally. For me, first, pull a short line slanting slightly to the upper right while curving. Stop at the center line. Then, gently curve down to the lower left. Stop here again. Lift, expand slightly upward, and pull horizontally. Finally, with a gentle curve, bring it down. Do not cross the center line. The flick should be slightly lower than the left binding part. For mu, the first stroke, draw a horizontal line slanting to the upper right. The second stroke, place the pen at a 45-degree angle to the center line. Bring it straight down from a position slightly to the left, then stop. Move to the upper left, raise to the upper right, and bind. Bring it down, move to the right, and continue upwards, creating a rounded shape. Next, with the image of connecting to the top, finally, dot towards the lower right. The first stroke, gently curve down towards the center line. The second stroke starts from a higher position, curving down to the lower left. Stop here for a moment. Lift and rotate. Leave ample space inside. Finally, flick to the right of the center line. The flick should be slightly lower than the left part. Start from the center line, expanding to the left. Then bring it down near the center line. Stop here for a moment. Then flick upwards to the right. The final flick direction is slightly towards the center line. Here, with the image of connecting, draw 2 horizontal lines. Ensure the left side aligns generally. This is the way to write ya. Start from the center line. Rise diagonally to the upper right. Rotate it here. Leave a slight gap from the center line and flick. Then, with the image of connecting to the next point, dot it. Also, from here, with the image of connecting to the final third stroke, move straight down diagonally to the right towards the center line. Stop here. Now, let's move on to you. First, here. Bring it down slightly to the left while expanding. Then, here is slanting upwards to the right, so draw to match this. Rotate it, bring it down again, and finally, flick it upwards near the center line. The last vertical stroke starts to the right of the center line. At first, bring it straight down here, but gradually curve to the left from the middle, and finally, flick it around the center line. Next is yo. For the first stroke, draw it short and upwards to the right. For the second stroke, place the pen at a 45-degree angle on the center line and bring it straight down. Finally, curve strongly to the left. Stop here for a moment. Then, rise diagonally to the upper right and move down diagonally to the lower right. Ensure that the tie and the final stop align approximately at the bottom. Let's learn how to write wa. First, while expanding to the left, bring the vertical stroke straight down just below the starting position. Next, with the image of connecting to the second stroke, intersect a slanting horizontal line towards the upper right, with the left side longer and the right side slightly protruding. Then, bring it down to the lower left. Stop here for a moment. Move significantly upwards to the right. Rotate smoothly, and finally, flick. Take up a wide space here, higher than the vertical stroke. Change direction here. Rotate. The final flick should be slightly higher than the standing angle. Leave a gap here. Now, let's explore, first, pull a horizontally curving line towards the upper right. And for the second stroke, bring it down towards the lower left from the central line. Stop here for a moment. Expand slightly upwards towards the center line, then bring it down with the image of connecting to the next stroke. From here, move diagonally to the lower left and intersect at the center line. Change direction at the lower left, and finally, move horizontally. The stopping point for the last stroke is here. Be careful not to make it too long. Also, ensure that the left part aligns. Place the pen at a 45-degree angle to the center line. Bring it straight down to the lower left. Stop here for a moment, then return slightly, turning towards the center line from a position slightly to the left. Stop here for a moment. bring it down, then flick towards the upper right. Ensure the lower part aligns. This is how to write ra first, starting from above the center line. Dot towards the lower right. Then, slightly to the left of the center line, gently curve while bringing it down to the lower left. Stop here for a moment. Then move upwards to the right and rotate it smoothly. Finally, flick near the center line. Now, let's explore ri. For the first stroke, expand slightly to the left, stopping around the center line and jumping up to the upper right. Then, with the image of connecting to the second stroke, maintain a similar distance from the center line for both strokes. Expands from a higher position than the first stroke, curving down to the right. Finally, flick near the center line. First, draw a short, upward slanting line to the upper right. Then, bring it down to the lower left, curving right, forming a round shape. After crossing the center line, move up to the upper right, then down to the lower right, creating a knot. It takes on a shape resembling a long trapezoid. For the first stroke, expand to the left while starting from the initial point. Bring it straight down. Then, with the image of connecting to the second stroke, slant upwards to the right. The left side is longer, and the right side slightly protrudes as they intersect. Move down to the lower left, stop here for a moment, then rise significantly upwards to the right. Stop here again. Bring it down while curving to the right, and finally, flick. The first vertical stroke should be higher. The peak on the upper right should be slightly lower than the first vertical stroke. The final flick should be positioned slightly above the first vertical stroke. Finally, let's look at ro. First, pull a short horizontal line towards the upper right, stopping here. Then, bring it straight down to the lower left, stopping again. Rise slightly to the upper right, rotate smoothly, and finally, flick near the center line.